Hello, everyone. We'll start with the webinar. I'll share my screen. Just let me know once you're able to see my screen. You can drop in a thumbs up if you're able to see the screen. Awesome. So, welcome again. Welcome to the third webinar in the series, Zoho Creator for Zoho One. And in this series, in this episode, we'll be looking at how to use Zoho Creator to streamline your approval processes. Before we get started with the webinar, a few housekeeping points. All attendees will be on mute. And we also have experts who've joined us for this webinar. So in case if there are any questions, please feel free to use the questions tab at any point in time and ask your questions. Feel free to participate in all these polls which will be run and also the post session survey. With your inputs, it will help us curate the upcoming webinars and give you tailor-made webinars for the upcoming sessions. And all attendees will receive the recording of this session after the session is over. You can take a screenshot of this particular slide, or we'll also send you this deck after the webinar is over. So you can use this URL to access the previous recording. So you can go back to the first webinar and the second webinar. In the first webinar, we covered the key use cases for Zoho Creator, as well as in the second webinar, we delved into creating the first application and we created a tracker application. All right. For folks who are new to Zoho Creator, Zoho One offers 55 plus applications for you to handle your business processes and operations. Zoho Creator is a low-code application developer platform which allows you to build custom applications for your business needs.
Roshan, 1 second. I am not able to see the deck. I'm able to see your screen, but not the. Could you just reshare once and then I think good to go.
Sure. Mira, could you confirm if the slide is visible?
Yes, it is now. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mira. All right. For people who are new to Zoho Creator, like I mentioned, Zoho One offers a bundle of 55 plus business applications for you to handle your business processes and operations. And within this bundle, you also get a powerful low-code application development platform, which is Zoho Creator. It allows you to build custom applications for your business needs. So when we talk about custom application development, typically we think about going to a developer to get the application done. However, with the help of Zoho Creator, even non-technical users like business users and business leaders can use the platform to build the application. And in the earlier sessions, we had covered one of these use cases, which is a tracking application. You would have a lot of items or data in your organizations to track. For example, you need to track projects or let it be leaves, expenses, etc. We created an application to track asset last time. So you can use this link to go back to the previous recordings later and check out how to use Zoho Creator to track assets. And for this webinar, we'll focus on building an asset management approval application. So we'll take a quick moment here to answer the poll, which will be seen on your screen. All right. So the agenda for today's session is, first we'll explore the approval processes and its relevance in today's context. And then we'll go on to an application demo. With that application demo, I'll show you a walkthrough of the application. And then we'll try to recreate the same application. And while creating the application, we'll set up two databases. One is to maintain the assets. Another one is to keep track of the employees. And then we'll create a custom asset request form with inbuilt workflows. And then we'll go on to configure a multi-level workflow approval. And then finally, we'll configure workflows for you to update the asset inventory when asset request is approved or rejected. So managing approval processes. Approval processes are nothing but workflows that require one or more levels of authorizations before completing a certain action or decision. These approval processes are universal and are present across all business functions. However, there can be a lot of challenges when there isn't a proper system in place for you to handle these approvals. Even today, many businesses rely on email chains or in-person meetings or phone calls for uh, for getting the approvals processed. This could lead to inadvertent delays and errors, or sometimes even missed approvals. And it can be hard for someone to gain access, visibility into the stages of approval. For example, if another stakeholder wants to know the status of an approval, they are dependent on someone else to know the status of that particular approval. And this leads to unnecessary follow-up and inefficiencies. And as the team scales or as the business grows, it gets even more difficult and cumbersome for you to manage this approval process. Zoho Creator allows you to build these approval processes. It steps in as a perfect platform for you to streamline all the approval processes in place. There'll be various components in an approval process, right? Like there'll be approvers, there'll be requesters, there should be different stages, and sometimes there can be conditions. If certain conditions are met, the approval has to be processed. And there can be feedback loops based on the feedback that's been given. There can be multiple levels of approvals that might be required. Creator helps you in building approval applications for all these scenarios and for all your business needs as well. Like I mentioned earlier, approvals are versatile in nature and they can be used in across various business functions. For example, here we have a list of business functions where there can be different approval processes involved. For example, in a HR department, they might need an approval for leave requests or a approval application to manage expenses, reimbursements, hiring, etc. Similarly, we also have for the use cases mentioned here for the other departments such as finance, sales, operations and admin, marketing, IT security, customer service, etc. As I mentioned, for this particular webinar, we'll create an asset request approval application. The roles that we've imagined here would be three roles. One is an employee who will be requesting the assets, and a manager who will be approving the request from the employee, and then that goes on to the admin. The admin gives the final approval for that particular asset request. When the asset can be processed, the admin approves the particular request, and then automatically the updates are made to the database. And we'll use two databases here. One is to maintain the employee data. Another one is to maintain the list of assets in the inventory. We'll take a quick moment here before we go into the app demo for a poll. All right, let's go to the app demo. So this is the approval application that we built in less than 2 hours time. So here you will see we have a form where you can add additional assets and a list of asset inventory. So here you can keep track of all the assets that are there in the inventory and also add new assets when and where required. And we also have an employee database where we keep track of all the employees in the organization. And if I need to add any further employees, I can use this form to add the employees. And then there is this form which employees use to raise request. So the employees will have to choose their employee ID, and automatically their details will be captured and dynamically displayed. For the purpose of the demo, I've configured it in a way where we have a drop-down and dynamically fetch the details. However, it is also possible for you to design it in a way that the logged in user details are automatically captured and displayed. And then there is a request date field which captures the current date, and this field is disabled so that employees do not tweak this particular field. And then by which date they require the asset is captured. And then we go on to add an asset. So here we have a sub form which essentially allows me to enter multiple requests. For example, if I need a couple of assets, I can go ahead and choose the type of asset that I need. and automatically asset category is captured, and the required number of asset can be entered here. We've also had a validation condition here. So let's say I choose another asset, and here I enter a count which is greater than the inventory which is available. Let's say I enter 700. It throws an error saying we do not have the requested number of assets in stock. The only total available quantity is 100. So the employee knows that, okay, I'll have to enter a number which is less than the inventory number. And then once this particular request is submitted, I can go and check my pending requests here. So this is the request that I currently submitted, and this would go for the stage 1 approval. I have a screen here for showing the manager's view. So this is the manager view. Manager gets a notification here saying you have an approval action pending. And then if I go to my pending task, I'll see the last request here. And then I can approve as a manager and add comments. Once the level 1 approval is done, you'll notice that in the pending task, it shows that I'm waiting for the level 2 of approval, which is from the admin side. I also have another screen here to show you the admin side, where there's a notification as well. And if this asset can be delivered for that employee by the expected delivery time, and if it is already delivered, I can mark it as approved and then say completed. Now, once this is done, it's very important for us to update the inventory count accordingly. So if I go back to the asset inventory, I've requested for a laptop and an external hard drive, and that's been approved. So if you look at the external hard drive, every count was previously updated as 100. You'll notice that it's gone down to 98. Accordingly, the other resource also would go down in number. So here the monitor has come down from 100 to 99. So this is the approval application that we've configured. So we'll now go back and try creating this from scratch. But before we go ahead, we'll take a small moment here to answer the poll, which will be on your screen. And also, please feel free to use the chat bar, the questions panel, for you if you have any questions related to Creator, or if you have any questions which is around the application that they're building right now. All right, let's go ahead and start building the application from scratch. I'll create an application from scratch and call it set request management. And then I'm asked to create a form. When I want to create a form, I can either create a form from scratch, or I can import an existing database or a spreadsheet that I'm using, or also use AI to build applications on my behalf. Here, I already have a spreadsheet that I will be importing. So if I look at this, first I'll import my employee data. Notice here, Creator automatically assigns the field type that is there in the spreadsheet. And then it also gives me some smart suggestions. For example, here, both the first name and last name is captured in the same field. So it's asking me to standardize the name column. I take the suggestion and click on yes. I'll just check this suffix and prefix option off. First name and last name should do. Rest everything else seems fine. I can also adjust the field type if required. For example, if I want to change a field to a different field, that I can do as well by clicking on customize field. And then I click on create. And within a couple of seconds, this particular sheet will be automatically converted to an application with the database. So I'll quickly take a moment here to rename the particular module so that it's easy for me to go back. I'll also rename this to employee database. Now we're done. So here you see within seconds, we've converted a spreadsheet to an application here. You see all the list of employees. And if I want to add further employees, that can be done as well. And I can also edit this application at any point in time based on my needs. Now we'll go ahead and add the second database, which is the asset database. Here, I'll just tweak this field. It shows as a radio field. I would want to have this as a drop-down field. Rest, everything looks fine to me. So all the inventory quantity is set to 100. So when we finally implement a workflow to update the inventory, we'll know how it is affected. And if I want to change something in real time also, I can do this here by clicking on any of the field and changing it. Just click on create. Similarly, I'll just take a moment here to rename the modules so it's easier for me to refer to them at a later point in time. I'll rename this to asset inventory. We're done importing the asset database. I have the list of inventory items here. And if I want to add new items, I can also do that. Now we're done with importing both the database that we had in spreadsheet. Now let's go ahead and create a form from scratch to capture the requests from the employees. So for that, I'll create a form from scratch and I'll call this as a asset request form. Now, first up, I'll use a lookup field to refer to the employee ID. A lookup field allows me to access another module or another form within the application. So I can use it across applications as well or within a specific application. So here I would want to refer to the employee form that I have, and I would want to refer to the employee ID here. And the second field is going to be a name field to capture the employee name. And then we need the department. All of this can be a lookup as well, but I'm using the fields here because I have a workflow which I would be demonstrating at a later point. Then we need a date field to capture the expected delivery date. I'll set the date to current date so that by default the current date is populated there. And then I go on to add a subform. Basically, what a subform does is for me to, it allows me to add multiple rows. So I create a blank subform and I'll call the subform as choose the required assets. And here I can add the field. So here first field, I'll add a lookup field from the assets. So when an employee clicks on the asset name, and then automatically we'll need to populate the asset category. So another lookup I'll rename this part to asset name. Sorry, this is asset name. And this is asset category. And then we'll add a third field here to capture the required number of assets. So we'll put a number field. So we are done creating the application frame. However, there is still work needed, because here, if I pick any of the employee, the details should be automatically captured, as well as here, the employee should not be able to change the request date also has to be captured. So we'll include one more date field here. This is going to be the request date. And the request date has to be the current date. And this need not be the current date. So I'll remove this here. So here the employee should not be able to change the request date. So we'll have to disable this field as well. And here when the asset is picked, automatically the asset category also has to populate. So we'll write workflows for the same. So for that, we go to the edit mode of the application and we go to the workflow section. And here we go to the form workflows. This is where we'll be writing the majority of the workflows. These are all simple scripts that you can easily write for you to create the workflows in the backend. So first, I'll choose the form. Here, I need to write a workflow for the asset request form. And when a record is created or edited, here I say load of the form. So basically, when the form loads, I want to hide a certain number of fields. So hide and disable certain fields. So I'll do that. So disable request date, disable employee name, disable department. We're disabling employee name and department because we're fetching this dynamically. So we'll be disabling this. And then we're also fetching the asset. So we'll be doing this as well. We'll be fetching the asset from the subform. So we'll be disabling that asset category as well. And then we want to first hide a few fields. For example, only when the employee chooses the employee ID, we would want to show the employee name and employee department. So first, initially, we'll hide the employee name as well as hide the employee department. So we've created a workflow here. Let's go and check how this has taken shape in the application. So here, if you look at it, if I click on this, you see first this is grayed out, meaning you will not be able to change this request date, which is the current date, and asset category is also disabled. But we are still yet to write the workflow for us to dynamically show the employee name and department, as well as fetch details for the employee name and department. So we'll go ahead and do that. Again, I go to the form workflow. And this time, I create a new workflow for the asset request form, the creator or editor. And here I need the condition as user input of a field. Basically, when the user enters some value in the employee ID field, I need to dynamically populate it or show it. So here the field will be employee ID, and make fields visible. I'm yet to write the condition here, so I'll choose the field employee ID is not null. So when the employee ID is empty, it will not show me anything. But when there is something in the employee ID, it will show me the associated name and department. So now we've only written the workflow for us to show the employee name and department. We are yet to write the workflow to fetch the associated details. So we'll go back to the workflow. We'll create a new workflow here. User input of the field and employee ID. We'll have to auto-populate the name and department. We made it visible, but we are yet to populate it, so we'll do that. So I'm using a fetch task where I declare a variable first, and then choose the form from which I need to fetch the data. And from the variable that I've used, I'm fetching the employee name and inputting it in my current form. We'll now see if it is dynamically populating in the asset request form. So we've dynamically populated the associated employee name and employee department here. We still have to dynamically populate the asset category as well. So for that, I'll create another workflow. User input of a field. So here, when the asset name is picked, I'll have to auto-populate the asset category. Since it's a subform here, I'm mentioning row dot asset category. Now go back to my application and see if the asset name when we pick the asset name, if it dynamically populates the asset category. So it automatically, when I choose desktop PC, you see it fetches IT equipment, what's mentioned there in the database. So if I choose something else, where if I choose a whiteboard, it changes to office furniture. So On a form level, all the workflows are done. We still have to add a validation here because right now, though the available inventory is 100 for all items, even if I enter 1,000, it will not throw up a validation. So we'll have to set up that validation part, for which we'll write one more workflow. And then we'll head on to configuring the approval process. With this, we'll be done with the form side. Then we'll go to the approval workflow. In the form workflow, I click on new workflow. I set request form, created editor, and the user input of required number of assets. We'll have to check the inventory. I'll use a fetch task again. I'm writing a condition if the input quantity is less than the, sorry, if the input quantity is greater than. So here we'll say first we'll mention the inventory quantity. So if the inventory quantity is less than the input quantity, then alert the user. I can also use any of the fields that I've mentioned. So I'll do that. What this does is basically this fetches the available quantity and shows. So it shows we do not have the requested number of assets in stock, the total available quantities, and whatever quantity is available in the inventory will be mentioned here. Now, once that's done, I need to reset the user's input row to 0. This basically gives a better user experience because if I enter 1,000 and if an error shows up, when the user goes back, the 1,000 has to be cleared and a 0 has to be mentioned there. So it makes it adds to the user experience. So for that, I'll write a small line. And with this, we've set up the validation in the field level. Let's go check if the validation works. I'll just directly go here and choose one. And since I just enter 101, it says we do not have the requested number of assets in stock. The total available quantity is, since we've mentioned 100 for all the inventory items, it shows 100. And automatically this number is reset to 0. So with this, all the form level workflows are done. All that's left for us to do is to configure the approval workflow. But before that, we'll take a quick pause here to answer the fourth poll. And meanwhile, if there are any questions, like I said earlier, please feel free to use the questions panel to ask our experts. All right, let's go ahead and configure the approval process of the application. For configuring the approvals, what I need to do is go to edit mode of the application. All the forms part is done. All that's left for me to do, and even the data is populated for the, we have data for employees and assets. So all that's left for me to do is to configure the approval workflows in place. And it's very simple and straightforward process with Creator. So I go to the edit mode of the application. and then go to the workflow section. Here we have a dedicated approval workflow section where you can use that to create your own approval workflows. Here, I need to configure the approval workflow on the asset request form and asset request. You can also set some condition, but here I'm using always. And make sure that the user that who's going to be approving for the level 1 or level 2 or any number of levels that you have in place, make sure that you've already added them to the user section. I'll take a moment to show that as well after I've done configuring this. So in the approval, so this is how the screen would be, where you can add the approver. So this would be the level 1 approver that you would be adding. And the approver can be added in 3 ways. Like you can choose a user, a particular user, and add them as an approver. So if I click on here, the added user in this account will come up. And let's say if managers or any particular role that you have in your organization hierarchy should have a common access, right? So for that, you can also set up roles. And when you click on roles, the defined roles will show here. You can choose any of the role, and the person who's associated to that role will have the approving access. And finally, there is field level approval as well. So I'll choose user for this scenario. And for the level 1 approval, I'll choose this person, Roshan DB2. And you can modify the approval label. In this case, let it be approve and reject. And click on. Okay. It is taking a minute. Let me just quickly refresh. Yeah. User, version DB2, and save approval. Yes. Now here I can either add an action even before an approver is set, whereas I can write some custom workflow behind, or once the approval request is raised, I can when I approve that particular request as a level 1 manager or a person who approves the particular request, you can configure to send some notification. In this case, there's already an email template here. I can add some details if required. I can say your asset request has been approved, but you can feel free to play around with this. And if you need to configure any action, you can set up any workflow. You can use this here to do that as well. However, in our situation, we would not be doing that in the level 1. However, with the level 2, we'll be doing that. So here, I'll go ahead and add the level 2 approver, which will be Roshan.db1. And when the level 2 approver approves the request, the inventory has to be modified. So we'll write a workflow for the same as well. Basically, this is a for loop for me to go through the inventory and update the for each item, right? So for every input of the asset, so I'll have to go through the inventory and update the relevant item accordingly. So that's the script that I've typed here. And when we save that, our approval workflow is done. I'll go back to the application. As I mentioned, I'll also show the user management section here. So if you go to the creator homepage, you will see the users panel here. When you click on the user panel, you will be taken to the Zoho One's directory page. Choose creator, and within creator, just make sure that the users are added as well as they have access to that particular application. So this is the application that we just created. So I'll give the permission for both users that we added as approvers. Done. Now see if now that we've set up the user access and everything, let's see if this application works. Adding a couple more items. Okay. I've raised the request. So my request will be automatically shown here. So since we included the approval workflow, it shows this approval module as well, where I can see my current approval request and wait for the approvers to approve the request. So this view that you see here, I've changed to the level 1 approvers view, where the level 1 approver will get a notification saying that you have an action approval item pending. So when I click on that particular thing, I'll see that the person has raised a request, and I click on approve. Level 1 approval is done. I'll come back here and see what's the stage. Similarly, level 1 approval was done. And then here, this is the view of a level 2 approver, which in our case would be the admin. So if I click on this notification, I'll see that the level 2 approver has John has requested, so I can approve this as well. And now if I open this again, you will see that this has been approved. Now what's important is for us to go back to the asset and check if the inventory has taken if the inventory has been updated accordingly. You will see that the desktop PC, the office chair, as well as the filing cabinet has been updated to 99 based on the number that is requested. So with this, we complete the demo for the asset request management application. Similarly, you can use this particular demo that we did. You can take the learnings from this and apply to any of your use case that we have where you want to manage and configure approvals. And this can also be set for an organization wide or for a team level approval. So you can feel free to explore around and configure your own approval workflows for your business needs. And with that, we'll take one moment to answer the final poll. All right. I hope this session was useful. And if you have any questions, like I said, use the questions tab to ask our experts in this webinar. Or if you feel free to, if you wish to connect with us one-on-one and discuss your particular use case that you have on mind, please feel free to drop an email to onesolutions@zohocreator.com. We can help you in creating a custom application if you wish to go ahead with Creator and creating it on Creator.